This interview is part of the Oral History Project sponsored by the State Bar of New Mexico and the Senior Lawyers Division. I'm Freddie Romero. I'm a member of the Senior Lawyers Division conducting an interview with Robert E. Sabin. Today is September 15th, 2021, and the interview is being conducted via Zoom with Mr. Sabin, who is in Roswell, New Mexico. Mr. Sabin, I want to express the appreciation of the Senior Lawyers Division for you taking some time to talk to us today. We're very much interested in hearing from you with regard to your career as an attorney. I thought we might start out with just a question, Mr. Sabin, of where you grew up, and tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I grew up in a small town in southeastern Colorado, La Junta, Colorado, about 9,000 people, really just an all-American town, great place to grow up. I was born in 1941, so I was there during the 40s and 50s, active in Scouts, just a good place to grow up. My dad was a lawyer and then later a rancher. So I mainly lived in town, although I spent some time out at the ranch, and then went to the University of Colorado in 1959.
What sort of law did your dad practice?
He had he was, I'd say, general civil. So I kind of come from a family of attorneys. My grandfather was an attorney. He was in general civil practice in La Junta. His uncle, who he practiced with, Fred Sabin, was a very well-known and recognized trial attorney in Colorado. So my grandfather came from Michigan and he graduated from the University of Michigan Law School, came to La Junta and began practice with his uncle, Fred Sabin. So then my dad went to law school at the University of Colorado and 39, I think it was. He got out, went into the Army, started practice after World War II, and had a general civil practice. He was assistant attorney, district attorney for that judicial district, which was not a full-time job. It was kind of a part-time job. And then he had a general civil practice in addition to that. And then in about the early 50s, he was asked if he would take over running the family ranch, which he did, and pretty much closed his practice in about 53, 54. He kept an office, but he was more a full-time rancher from that point on.
I take it with those influences, there really wasn't much question that you were going to go into the legal field?
No, and there was never any push to do it. It was just something that was, I guess, in my blood. It was just very interesting to me, and it was something that I just always, I guess, knew from the time I was in grade school that that's what I wanted to do. I had a good friend whose dad was a doctor in La Junta, and he collared me when I was, I guess, a senior, and his son we were going to be roommates in college and were for a year. But his dad collared me and he said, I think you really ought to think about going to medical school. Doctors make more money than lawyers do. I think you'll find it just a more profitable life. And I said, well, that's fine, but that's not what I want to do. I want to be a lawyer. So it was I just, as I say, I knew that probably from grade school.
And did you go to both undergraduate school and law school at the University of Colorado?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your law school experience. I have the sense that perhaps things have changed over the years.
It was great. I would say it was, for me, that was that was one of the best times in my life. I mean, I worked hard at it, but it was just really rewarding, intellectually stimulating, um, great time. I had some really good professors there that um, helped me along, and one of them was a guy named um, Dean Reed, who went on then to be dean at University of Michigan. Don Sears was helpful. I was the editor of the Law Review, or the articles editor, and he was the representative from the faculty and was a big help. So it was, ours was the first expanded class in law school. Up until that time, the law school classes had been around 50, and CU moved into a new building. And that year, was the first year they had two sections, and our class was about 105. Made a lot of friends, learned a lot. I've just got good memories.
Were there any particular subjects that you really enjoyed in law school?
I like con law. Conflicts of law. I would say those were my two favorite subjects.
And what year did you graduate from law school?
In 1966.
Okay. And you took the bar exam, I take it?
I did. I took the Colorado bar in late July of 66. And then married to my wife, Kathy. We had one son, he was a couple of years old at that point. And I already had a job in Roswell with the Atwood Malone firm. So we loaded up in, what we had in, I don't remember for sure. I think it was a van. It may have been a trailer, and moved to Roswell and moved into a house. And then I had 1 week to get ready for the New Mexico bar, and studied and took the New Mexico bar. So I had two bar exams in a period of about 3 weeks.
Wow. How had you heard about the Atwood Malone firm?
It was just happenstance. I was kind of looking for a community of about 40 to 50,000 people. I didn't want to go small as where I'd grown up. I didn't want to go Denver size. So I interviewed a few places in Colorado, Grand Junction, Greeley, Fort Collins, and had some familiarity with New Mexico, and thought we'd interview in Santa Fe. And just about that time, when we had things set up, announcement came up on the bulletin board that Atwood Malone in Roswell, New Mexico was looking for an attorney. And I didn't know anything about Roswell or Atwood Malone, but one of my friends there was engaged to one of Robert O. Anderson's daughters. And he said, look, if you have any interest in New Mexico, I understand from my future father-in-law that Ross Malone is an unbelievably good lawyer. He was just finished being president of the ABA, had a national reputation. He said, I think you ought to seriously go down there. So I scheduled an interview and as part of the swing into New Mexico and interviewed and got offered the job. And we just clicked and I took it on the spot.
Was it a pretty small firm at that time?
Yeah, actually, about the same size as it is now, maybe a little smaller. It was probably about. It was probably I was probably the sixth lawyer.
And what were your experiences as a young lawyer with the Atwood firm?
Well, they were good. I didn't get to work with Ross Malone very long because after a year or less than a year, he was asked to go and become general counsel for General Motors. So he left just about a year after I arrived. But Bob Turner, Joe Johnson were very helpful, very supportive, both good friends. I was brought in with the idea the firm represented a bank here in town that was just getting started. And I was brought in with the idea of doing bank work, bank documents, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. It was about that time that the U.S. Supreme Court directed by order that it was required that indigents have counsel if they're charged with felony crimes. New Mexico didn't have any kind of public defender system at that point. So the local judges would just appoint lawyers out of the local bar. So all of the appointments that came to Atwood Malone came to me as the low man on the totem pole. So I started doing a fair amount of trial work just immediately. I think I had my first jury trial, which was a kidnapping case, which I think was a second-degree felony within 6 months after I'd started practice. So anyway, I got to doing trial work and did all right in it, and I just kind of got slipped into that slot and then started doing civil trial work as well. Had a lot of support from the local judge at that time, George Reese. He was exceptionally bright, pretty gruff, but exceptionally bright attorney. He was, I don't remember whether he was one of the editors, but one of the drafters, but he had a significant role in the American Law Institute, at least with respect to the restatement of torts. And he had a process of kind of taking young lawyers that he thought would make trial lawyers sort of under his wing. And he had first had Bob Turner, Judge Bob Baldock, and Harold Hensley from the Hinkle firm. And he worked with them for a couple of years. And then when he thought they were ready to go, he invited me and Judge Paul Kelly and a lawyer in the DA's office, Bill Fleming, to kind of be his next class. And so by class, I mean, he would just periodically have us come into the office and maybe every once a month, once every couple of weeks, visit with us. If there was a case that he thought was particularly interesting, some good lawyers, he'd let us know if we had time. It might be a case that we could learn something from. And then when the case was over, and he did this with our own cases when we appeared. And once it was all over and his role was over, he would call us in and kind of round table what he thought and what we thought the lawyers had done right, what they might have been able to do better. But it was really invaluable learning experience.
It sounds like it. Was Judge Reese the only judge in Chaves County at that time, or where was he at?
He was the only judge in Chaves County. And it just goes to show how many duties have been inherited or foisted onto the judiciary. I mean, at that point, the population of the 5th Judicial District, which is Chaves, Eddy, and Lee counties, was not greatly different than what it is now. And we had 3 judges, one in Chaves, one in Eddy, and one in Lee. And they kept right up. I mean, things moved quickly. Case would get filed. It would go to trial. If it was going to trial, it was going to trial within, I can't ever remember any cases taking longer than 9 months to get to trial. Now, you know, things were different, way different in terms of discovery. Part of it was the camaraderie of the Chaves County Bar Association, but it wasn't unusual at all. Now, I'm not talking about huge civil cases, but significant civil cases, car accident cases, slip and fall cases, that sort of thing, to go to trial with, maybe one deposition of the plaintiff, but there usually wasn't a heck of a lot of written discovery. Most of the plaintiff's lawyers that I dealt with would call you up and say, look, I filed the case. Why don't you come over and take a look through the file? Judge Baldock did that with him a number of times. We'd sit and talk about the case. You want to talk to the doctor? Okay, let's schedule an appointment and go talk to the doctor. And we'd mosey over at the doctor's office and talk with the doctor what he was going to say. And then you went to trial.
I take it things have changed over the years from your observations.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of any case that goes to trial in 9 months now. Lots and lots of discovery, and there's good and bad to that. But it's a lot more expensive to go to trial now, which I think is one, and it takes longer, which is, I suspect, one reason why there is so few jury trials. It's just too expensive to do anymore. I used to, if not counting, not thinking about the criminal cases, but I was kind of done with those by probably the criminal appointments. I was probably pretty well done with those by, I don't remember when the public defender system really fired up, but early to mid 70s, I was pretty well out of that. So just doing civil stuff. And I used to pretty regularly run 4 or 5 jury trials a year. And now some of lawyers in our firm, and I think generally this is true, they've practiced for a number of years and may not have had any jury trials.
Well, you've been practicing how many years now?
Well,
I remember being at your 50th anniversary.
Yeah, I guess it's about 60.
And over that period of time, I'm sure you've tried all kinds of cases. Any of them that kind of stand out?
Oh, yeah. let's see, two that's one or two, however you want to say, that stand out. Just because it came out all right, but it was just an unusual situation. We'd gotten to docket. This was in the early to mid 80s, I guess. Got into the docket call, and I think it was Judge Sneed, had set these two cases that I had back to back. He set one, said docket call was in November. So in March, he set one case, and then pretty soon another one of my cases came up, and he gave a setting the day after, the same day maybe, or the next day of the first one. I said, Judge, you just give me a setting in this other case, so I always said one or the other will settle. Let's just leave it like it is. If it's a problem, you can get to me later. Well, neither one did settle, and somehow they ended up getting, I can't remember how, transferred to a Carlsbad judge, Judge Walker. And so Judge Walker said, well, no, we're just going to try them both. He said, here's what we're going to do. He said, we'll call the jury panel and we'll pick a jury for the first case, and then we'll let them set aside for a little bit. Then we'll bring the panel back and we'll pick a jury for the second case. And then I'll send the second jury home for just on standby. And when you finish the first trial and the first jury goes out for deliberation, we'll have the second jury back and you'll roll into the second trial. And that's, Judge, I can't do that. Oh, he said, yeah, you can do that. That's no problem. So that's what we did. So the first, Judge Ken Wilson was on one of the cases, and he still laughs about that. I don't remember whether he was on the first one or the second one, but it was the darndest thing. We did closing arguments on the first one. The jury left, and I had someone to the office come and take the files from the first case out, bring the files from the second case in. Judge gave me, I don't know, 30 minutes to kind of rig-gear my mind from closing arguments in case number one to opening arguments in case number two. Off we went, and when the first jury came in with the verdict, we took a break and took the verdict and went on with trial number two. So yeah, that stands out in my mind.
I bet it does.
we came out all right on it. Let's see. Had a case with a lawyer from Odessa named Warren Burnett, who was probably one of the most outstanding trial attorneys I've ever seen. In fact, I talked to Judge Currier one time about it. He had gone over to watch Warren Burnett do a closing argument in a criminal case over in Lee County. And he just had a phenomenal memory. He could take a trial that took a week and a half and spend, Judge Curry was telling me in that case he said Warren took probably 6 hours on his closing argument, and without a single sheet of paper in his hand, he would quote verbatim the testimony of various witnesses, what they had said during the trial. And I had pretty much the same experience. We lost the case. It wasn't a bad verdict, but he never had a single sheet of paper in front of him from opening to closing, and he didn't even, local counsel in New Mexico had prepared the case, and Warren didn't even really come into it until a couple of days before and reviewed things and fired up and off he went. I mean, it was just pretty astounding.
Well, I know that different lawyers prepare for cases in different ways. What was your kind of approach to preparing for a trial?
Oh, geez, I was always, I guess now they call it anal. I don't know. I always spent a lot of time going over the depositions, going over, get my exhibits ready, uh, organizing my questions, getting references to pages in depositions on cross where I could pull it up right away. So I always spent a lot of time getting ready for trial. I was not one like Warren that could just come in and look at it. I did a lot of work getting ready.
And I take it some of that work was pre-computer, as the computer.
Oh yeah, yeah. All of it was pretty much pre-computer, but I got I got a Mac computer, one of those little early Mac computers that was on my desk, and in about, I don't remember what year they came out, but maybe 84, 85, 86, something like that. And boy, it was a huge help in getting stuff together. I would always got in the habit at that point, and I'd done it by hand before, but I always had what I called a who's who list. And every time, and once I was able to do it on computer, we could keep it easily alphabetical. But anytime a name came up, whether I thought they were significant or not, as from the time I opened the file on, I'd just put in the who's who list. And later, if something came up, it was easy to look through the who's who. And when it was time to prepare witnesses list, I could look at the who's who and know who I need to make sure was listed in the witness list and didn't miss anybody that way. So computers really made the trial lawyer's life, at least for me, a lot easier. I could work on my cross with just big font, just parts of questions, just enough to remind me where to go. Same thing in opening and closing arguments. So it was a huge help.
And legal research has changed a little bit over the years.
Yeah. I didn't have any computerized research when I got out of law school. It was all into the books, and gee, I don't know. You graduated in what year?
81.
Did you learn computerized research in law school?
No, I was still slogging through the Decennial Digest.
Yeah. I don't think it was until early or mid 80s before we got the first any kind of computerized legal research. So for, I'd say, first third of my career, it was all into the books.
So you've got a couple of family members that have kind of followed your footsteps into the legal profession, right?
Well, yeah, I do. My son went to the University of Colorado Law School. He does legal and some non-legal work for housing, affordable housing type office in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My daughter is a paralegal at the Atwood firm, and my granddaughter just graduated from Arizona State University Law School and starting her job next week at a law firm in Phoenix. So, and again, I didn't. In fact, my son, his undergraduate degree, he got a joint degree in math and physics, and worked for National Center for Atmospheric Research for a couple of years after undergraduate, and I thought that was great. I didn't even think he was going to law school, but he then decided to go to law school, and the same with my granddaughter. I didn't push her. In fact, I probably discouraged her to some extent, but she kind of had it in her blood too. I can remember her at a, what the heck was this? Some of the young lawyers in town had out of the public defender's office or the DA's office, had a youth group where they would teach these kids to do a mock trial. And so she was like in the fourth grade, and she got into that. And I can remember going to that, and she walked in with her briefcase, and she was just a natural. And I thought, good God, it is in the blood, I guess.
I take it that you've had discussions with them and they can't fathom the practice of law without computers, right?
I'm sure, yeah, for sure.
Well, in addition to your career, you've been somewhat involved in the state bar over the years. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was on the state bar professional liability committee for, 15 years, and probably 12 or 13 of those I was chair of the committee. We, right about that time when I went on, which was also in the 80s, the plaintiff's bar in New Mexico had suffered a real problem in getting insurance at any cost. The insurance company, I can't remember, I think it was something like Globe Insurance, but there was a company that most of the plaintiffs bar in New Mexico got their malpractice insurance with. And that company went bankrupt. And so all of the lawyers were suddenly without malpractice insurance, and we're just having a heck of a time finding any insurance anywhere. The defense bar didn't have so much problem, although we had some difficulties too. So one of the things we did was to look to try to figure out what we could do. And we developed a relationship with a fellow named Russ Waters with a company called Health Agencies of the West in California. And he had done some work with the State Bar of Arizona, setting up, getting them hooked up with a lawyer's, well, it was really a risk retention company, which is a little bit different than an insurance company, but it was kind of a lawyer's owned and managed company. And New Mexico ended up going with that. So we had a member on the board, which was Jim Crouch, was our member on the board, and I was the chair at the local level. And so we ended up with Arizona, New Mexico, Mississippi, Virginia, New Hampshire, Georgia, a couple other states were in this risk retention group. And that enabled us to get available insurance, because one of the conditions was that they would make it available to all attorneys in the state. And we had an agreement in our contract that they would carry umbrella coverage with Berkshire Hathaway. So even though it was a risk retention group, we felt real comfortable with the whole thing. Now, later, it turned out we had some problems because into the 90s, they were getting a lot of claims. They got into some financial difficulties without telling anybody. And to, I guess, to save money, they canceled the umbrella coverage with Berkshire Hathaway. And then when we heard that, we immediately recommended to all of our lawyers get insurance elsewhere. And a lot of people, some people did, some people waited around, figured they'd wait until they see what happened on the thing. Well, that company, American National Lawyers Insurance Reciprocal, did out of business. And the people that were still there were just suddenly without insurance and had to go find something somewhere else. So that I made a lot of good friends on that committee, members of both sides of the bar, and I felt like we did some good.
Well, it was certainly an important issue that had to be tackled at the time, that's for sure. Were there other sorts of activities you were engaged in with the bar?
Well, I mean, they were mainly related to that. I was on some panels of CLE on that subject matter, and was active, as you know, in the Chaves County Bar, but I was never an officer, never chose to run as a bar commissioner or something like that. So that was the main thing I did in the state bar.
You've been a member of the American College of Trial Lawyers for a while. Can you tell us a little bit about the criteria for getting in and what your experience is?
Yeah, that's a wonderful organization. That's probably the one thing that I've enjoyed more than anything else as far as professional associations. Actually, Ross Malone it was founded in the 50s. Ross was one of the early members and was in line to become president of the American College when he was asked to become general counsel of General Motors. And he then had to drop out of the college because it's for practicing lawyers only. Anyway, Russ Mann and Bob Turner were in the college. And it's basically an invitation only. It's based on lawyers that have tried a substantial number of cases. It's very, you get nominated without your knowledge by someone, then there's an unbelievable amount of work that goes into vet, if you will, the prospective nominee. They talk to they get a list of the trials you've had in the last 5 or 6 years. And I know this now because I was New Mexico chair of the American College and I know how much work it was. But you talk to the opposing counsel in the trials that the lawyers have. You talk to the judges in those trials that the prospective nominees had. And the questions are, how well prepared was this lawyer? How good are his trial skills? And what is his professionalism? Is he somebody that follows the rules? And lastly, is he somebody that you would enjoy to be in an organization with and sit down with? And then after the state committee has done their work and either vote yay or nay on the prospective nominee, then if you vote yay, it goes up to the American College Board of Regents, and they go individually, one by one, through the nominees, and you have to get a majority of the vote of the Board of Regents. So it's and I would say over the years of people I've worked on, probably half of the people that have been nominated just didn't make the process for one reason or another. Usually it had to do something with, there was some, there's some top-notch trial lawyers in New Mexico that were not invited, and just because some people felt that their what they viewed as their professionalism was not what up to the standards of what the college expected. It was kind of, the original founders wanted an organization of people that were, you could sit down and have a cup of coffee with, and you all were people that looked at the profession in the same way. So, and that's still pretty much true today.
Well,
great bunch of people.
To follow up with that, and kind of a point of personal privilege here, Bob, you've been my mentor in both the legal profession, outside the legal profession, for the 39 years that I think I've known you. Your ethics are well known. I had a plaintiff's lawyer, a top-notch plaintiff's lawyer in court, make the comment one time that Bob Sabin was the gold standard for ethics for lawyers in the state of New Mexico. You've mentored a lot of lawyers in your career, both at the firm and I think formally now that there's kind of a bridge the gap sort of thing. From your perspective, what should a young lawyer know, both in terms of how to practice law and in terms of ethics, professionalism?
Well, you know what I pulled out here? The people that I mentored, I would, in the formal mentorship process, is what I'm talking about, I would end up the sessions and provide to them what's called the Sears charge. When I graduated, Don Sears was not yet the dean of the law school, but he spoke. I think Dean Reed had left, and Don Sears was filling in. So he gave a closing statement to my graduating class, and then he later became dean, and he continued to use this as his closing remarks. And then after he retired and has now died at the University of Colorado, they still give what they call the Sears charge. And this kind of sums it up for me. And I guess what I try to tell young lawyers, and frankly, I think there's a lot of young lawyers, my impression, most young lawyers just sort of have a different perspective. I think for many, it's a business decision. We're going into a business. I think this is a good way to make money, which is, I understand that, but it's just different. When I was in, most of the people going to law school had actually a real interest in the law as a profession, and in the opportunity to serve, and the unique opportunity to be one of the, really to make our system of government work. I think, I really get a lot of eye rolls, I think, by a lot of people, but I mean, that's just what it is. Anyway, the Sears charge, which I've given to some people, pretty much sums up my advice, and I gave it to granddaughter Jordan when she graduated. It says, "You've now received the Juris Doctor degree. Please do not take undue pride in this title, for in the final analysis, the test of your professional fitness will lie not in your title, but rather in your service to society and in the extent to which you combine professional skills with human concern, legal learning with intense integrity, great energy with high ideals. What kind of lawyer you will be depends on large part on the kind of person you are. I hope you may continue to grow and that in the years to come, you will live the most challenging life of all, the life of the mind, the life of service. To all of you, we wish great success in your chosen profession. Uh, Pretty good words. I still remember those and I keep that out. I try to, as I say, pass that along, but I I don't think most people approach it quite that way anymore.
Well, Bob, you talked earlier about when you first started practicing that a plaintiff lawyer would call you over and say, come and look at my file. And if you could resolve the case doing that, you could. Was there a formal mediation sort of process back when you started?
No, no. In fact, that didn't even, I don't think I'd ever, I think the first time, the first time I ever heard of mediation was when I started in the federal court and Judge DiGiacomo, the federal magistrate judge, was up there. And that was in the 90s. I'm pretty sure. Before that, she just picked up the phone and talked to the lawyer just over the telephone or over a cup of coffee at his desk and tried to get it resolved. Judge Giacomo, did you ever attend one of his mediations? He was a real hardball judge. In fact, really way too much so. But so no, we didn't do mediations until way down the line. And I think the cases that needed to get settled or could have been settled by a mediator, frankly, got settled between the lawyers. I don't think the system lost anything by not having the mediation process. There was just easier communication between counsel. People just, frankly, just got along better.
And you're actually conducting mediations now as a mediator.
I am, yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that. How's that experience?
Well, you know, I really enjoy doing it when I've got two people there that are there in good faith to try to get the case resolved. In most cases, that's true. I don't really irritates me though when one side or the other really doesn't have any intention of, they just kind of want to see what the other side will demand or offer and don't really have any sense of getting there. You get that really I've gotten to where if I see that coming, there's certain times I can tell that I'm going to run into that, and I'll just decline to do that. There's no sense wasting people's time and money. But if I'm working on one where people are there in good faith, I actually get a lot of satisfaction in doing that.
Well, Bob, you've had a long and career that has certainly meant a lot to a lot of people. And looking back on it, what has it meant to you personally and to Kathy and the rest of the family?
Well, I think there were plenty of times where Kathy was ready to pull her hair out. In fact, I was talking to a lawyer just yesterday about a mediation. And he said he had one jury trial set right after Thanksgiving, and another one set in early December, and another one set right after Christmas. And I said, over the years, I just, it seemed like every year I'd have a jury trial, either because we'd usually try to go up to Colorado where my parents and Kathy's parents lived at Thanksgiving and also at Christmas. And I don't know, just the luck of the draw or what, but I had a lot of trials. I had one trial starting on December 26th, and Kathy's parents had come down. We had got together for Christmas Eve, had dinner, did some stuff opened some Santa Claus packages on Christmas morning. I went to the office, started working on trial, came back for supper, had supper on Christmas, back to the office. I went, and so those times were, not were hard on the family, I think. But we, as you know, and even more so before you came along, the Chaves County Bar really had a great group of people. And the activities of the Chaves County Bar, we had a lot of really good friends that we did things together with as couples. It was just great. And I guess the friendships I've made with good lawyers over the years have just been worth gold. I've had some really good plaintiffs lawyers that we can go to depositions and they don't get drawn out, but we can both vigorously represent our clients or in trial and leave the building or leave the courthouse and go out and have dinner together and have the best time in the world. So that's been just very, I've met a lot of people I would not have met otherwise. So all in all, I guess to sum up the conversation, I've been lucky to be with a firm of really great people. It's been a rewarding life, certainly intellectually rewarding, and the friends and fellowships we've made. I can't imagine anything that I would have done that, despite some times when it was tense and frustrating, I can't imagine anything that I would have wanted to do. If there was one field that I wish maybe that I had the opportunity or taken interest to get into is water law. I think that's a real interesting area. If I was starting over, I would really, it's going to be critical in the West. And I think that's a fascinating area.
Well, Bob, I surely appreciate this. You're taking the time to talk to us. It sounds to me like you've certainly followed the Sears charge to the letter and the spirit. And I want to thank you on behalf of the division very much for taking time out to talk to us.
Well, thank you very much. You take care.
You too. Thank you.